Hey everybody, we are rolling a little bit early, so we'll give you a little free banter before. We've got some tech people here helping us out. You might want to check this over here and make sure I didn't do anything wrong, Bill.
Oh yeah, it's not showing us.
Yeah, it's not showing anything.
How is everybody?
And if we're live, it's not showing it over here either. Sorry. Alright, well, that way once we get everybody so we can see who's here, we'll say hi. Hope you guys are doing well. Alright.
Love the hair. The hair fluff.
Is my makeup okay?
It's beautiful. Hey everybody.
Hey, there we go.
Oh yeah.
And
So cool.
somebody just said there's no audio at the moment. So we'll make sure we get that. We'll do our best to try to watch what's happening here. And they said they got it now. So that's good.
Okay, good.
So we'll wait for some more people to join us.
How's everybody doing? Kind of got cabin fever, or are you still loving it?
I'm still loving it, being a borderline introvert, extrovert. I'm good. I'm holding steady. Yeah. So this is good for me. All right.
So we have audio.
We do have audio.
Okay.
We got
So
about
much
2
fun.
minutes till pay dirt for all the punctual people that are waiting to write at the moment. Right. So we wanna honor that, because that would be me probably.
Honor their punctuality.
Yeah. And then some of you joined us early to see if you could catch us doing something embarrassing. But
Ooh, some of you are camping.
yeah,
So much fun.
I picked my nose about 30 seconds before you joined us, so great. Fantastic. Well, in interesting news today, I climbed up on my roof with a backpack blower to blow off all of those squiggly things that come off oak trees, and they just come up everything, and they were really packed in. And so I'm like holding on with one hand, backpack blower, the whole deal. And it's a milestone for me, because I figured as long as I can do that, I tell Donna that means I'm not that old yet. And I get to the point where I'm too old to do that or too scared to do that, then, that's where you become an invalid, I don't know that word.
It scares me every time.
Yeah.
Like, I can't really focus on anything well until he's back on the ground.
Yeah.
And then I'm good.
I'm good. So, hey, Jason, Stephanie, let me see, the Laughlins. Hey, guys. Thanks for joining us.
It's so much fun to be able to see everybody
Oh,
join in.
T-Sal 1994. I have absolutely no idea who that is, but hi. It's excellent. All right, so we got some really neat questions that came in, and interesting, and some of them heartbreaking as well. But I figured we'd start off a little bit on the lighter note. First of all, I'm Jonathan. This is Donna.
Okay.
If you've never met Donna, some of you have never met Donna. 3 locations and all that, and she enjoys behind the scenes more than out front. But this is Donna. And what we thought would be fun during this relationship series called Life Hacks, Relationship Edition, that we've been doing the last few weeks, that we would talk specifically about marriage for a little while, drill down into that, since it's not something that we're able to spend a lot of time on the weekend messages themselves. So that's kind of what we're doing. You've been sending in questions, great questions, and we thought we would start with something a little bit more lighthearted. Somebody asked us what one of our favorite things to do is, specifically favorite restaurants to attend, to go eat at. Yeah. And so I'll tell you this right up front, is that we are not big chain restaurant people. Like, especially on vacations. We try to, with the exception of Cracker Barrel, because they're clean bathrooms. Yeah. Right? Because you can always stop and go to the bathroom.
That started when our girls were little, and I was always looking for a clean potty to take 2 little girls to. So
yeah, the downside is they're shopping there as well, and it's not good. But other than Cracker Barrel, when we're traveling, our most favorite restaurant experiences are the hole in the wall where the locals eat. Nobody's heard about it. Just dives, right? With just excellent food. And so we're everybody says this nowadays. We're foodies, but I think we were foodies before foodies were cool. Yeah. And so, yeah, I think so. So we love restaurants, and our favorite restaurants are the ones we've never been to before. Yeah. And so we get all excited when we can say, hey, we tried a new place. So we always take suggestions, so send them our way. Okay, I think one of the things we talked about that may help right up front is to kind of lay the context for how we came into marriage. Very different backgrounds. I came into marriage from a really, really messed up home life. I mean, really, really unhealthy, dysfunctional, all of the words. I mean, I had the picture perfect example of what marriage should not be in my biological parents' marriage. Donna, however, came from the exact opposite.
Yeah, really great, amazing. The exact opposite. Like, I wanted my marriage to be just like my parents. I wanted my family to be just like ours. So...
So you can imagine how that created a very interesting dynamic when we got married. I had great examples of what not to do as a husband. I didn't have really any good examples of what to do and the kind of husband to be. So she comes into marriage with all of these, it's going to be like this, and it's going to be like this. And I'm not sure what I thought it was going to be like, but we had completely different ideas of what it was going to be. And those converged, and boy, it was interesting, especially those first few years. We joke, it's not funny. It wasn't funny then, and really it's not funny, but we have to find humor in it somewhere. But we talk about those first few years kind of summarized with this scene. Donna is in the bathroom with the door shut, crying her eyes out. And I'm on the outside of the door, knocking on the door, and I'm saying, What? What'd I do? What'd I say? And so you can imagine, and some of you probably have experienced something very similar to that. So you just need to know that, okay? We don't have a perfect marriage. We're figuring it out. We're 25 and a half years, almost 26 years into this. And I think it's better than ever. I think we're stronger than we ever have been. But that has come with a lot of hard work, mostly on my part. I've done a lot of changing. No, what I'm saying, not that you haven't worked hard, but I'm saying I'm the one that was been most screwed up. So I've had the one, I've had to learn a lot. She's been very patient. So
I've learned just as much.
Yeah. Well.
Seriously.
Yeah, we're getting there. We're figuring it out. And we'll get this thing mastered by the time we're dead, I'm sure. All right. So, with all these questions you guys have sent in, and we'll try to pay attention to the chat that's coming in live as much as we can. And Donna's going to help me kind of look at that as well. But I wanted to start right up front by referring to something that happened earlier today or this weekend in our Life Hack series. Pastor Eric brought a great message about just not giving up in relationships. And I wanted to start there because if you missed that, if you haven't heard that, you need to go back because it's so practical and watch that because we've talked about how important it is right up front to just make a decision to not give up because so many marriages quit and give up right before it gets good, right before it has the opportunity to become great. They just don't hang in there long enough. They don't hang in there long enough to see change happen. And I know you're probably thinking, well, I've hung in there long enough, but it's just not happening. You'd be surprised. I've seen as a pastor, and we've seen many couples give up right on the verge of a breakthrough, right on the verge of healing, right on the verge of things getting better and beginning to pay off. So I'd want to say that, echo what he said this morning. Just don't give up. And I love when he was talking about grit.
Oh yeah.
Wasn't that great? It was just a wonderful way to kind of give a context and a foundation to approaching not giving up in marriage. So don't quit before it gets good.
And if you guys didn't see that, make sure to go back and see that because I feel like we could just say during this whole time, refer back to what Eric said. It was just such a good job, and you need to make sure you didn't miss it.
Okay, we're getting some questions coming in here that we're going to get to. Somebody asked, how do you deal with disagreements? Well, in a few minutes, you're about one of 10 people that have asked questions like that. So we're going to get to that in a minute. But I wanted to start with kind of something quick. Somebody wrote in, and this is a finances question, right? How to work through differences of opinion when one of you, husband or wife, it's not specific here, it doesn't matter. One of you wants to go into debt and the other one doesn't. Wants to go further into debt, wants to take on additional payments and the other doesn't. And so that's a common thing. You've got the bright idea. Hey, we need to do this. We need to buy this. We need to, sell this and get a bigger one of those or a nicer, newer, whatever. And one of the spouses going, I don't think I want to do that. That's just not something I'm comfortable with. And so I would say right up front, you just got to sit down and talk it out until you get to a place of agreement. Period. That's not sexy. That's not necessarily fun. But would you agree? I mean, you just got to get to a point where you hash it out until one of you convinces the other, or you come to an agreement on whether or not to go into further debt.
Yeah, if it's really a big deal, and if it's a big enough deal to write in and ask us, it's apparently a big deal. So always go with the Christian cliche of praying, but it's increasingly more important the more you disagree to bring God into it. Because kind of like Eric was talking about this morning, the whole grit thing, and he talks about ginormous amounts of humility and putting the other one first thought. That's really often the problem, is that we are pushing for our way so much that we don't stop to realize, we need to ask God for wisdom. So what we do, if it's hairy and awful, is just say, God, you've got to show us.
Yeah, and sometimes too, it's you've prayed and you tried to seek wisdom, and you just got to sit down and look at the numbers. Do the numbers make sense? Is this wise or not? So bottom line is, when it comes to all financial things and you're not seeing eye to eye, you just got to do the hard work of working through the conversation until you get on the same page. And prayer is part of that. Working through the numbers is a part of that. And seeking wise counsel is also a part of that. Let's jump into some communication stuff, because by far the largest chunk of questions that have come in were all about communication, and questions like, how do How do you communicate in a way that is well received and effective? What happens when you don't like each other? What happens when you've tried counseling and all these other things and you still don't like each other? What happens when your feelings change? All those kinds of deals. Let's begin with this, okay? When it comes to communication, we have learned that you have to communicate a lot about your communication. You have to talk a whole lot about how you talk. You have to communicate about how you communicate. And what that looks like for us is me saying something stupid, something that hurts Dom's feelings, and then when the dust settles and I'm sorry, please forgive me, it's then her going back and me going back into that moment and talking through what happened and where it went wrong and where, right? And then you would say, let me help you know the next time I say something like this and then you do that, this makes me feel this way.
Yeah, so for me, what I didn't realize is we really didn't know each other very well. We didn't know each other's style of communication.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even realize that was necessary. And so I think first you need to learn each other. See how the other one views things. See their perspective. Learn their love language.
Yeah, love language is very big. I mean, interrupt you there,
yeah.
But that's huge. Look into that.
Yeah, and we've got information. If you guys don't know what that is, we can totally get information to you. But I think definitely learning. We take time to learn a million different things, but we rarely take time to learn our spouse, especially early on. And so we try to suddenly put our lives together and expect it to work well. And then if it doesn't, then we just quit and move on to somebody else. And most of the time, it's just a perpetual thing that then you quit that and move on to somebody else because you've got to learn each other. And
yeah, study each other, right? Personality. Take personality assessments. We've taken, probably a dozen different personality assessments. I'm not sure there's that many. That might be a little exaggeration, but no less than 5 or 6, of the main ones through the years. And so, whether it's the DISC profile or the Enneagram or the Myers-Briggs or whatever it is, get a hold of some of those because it'll help you understand each other. We would take these assessments, and then once we get the results, we would look at each other and go, "Oh, well, that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like that makes total sense why you do that. It makes total sense why I feel this way when you do that, and all that kind of stuff." So study each other, learn each other when you're learning how to communicate, and talk about how you talk. Communicate about how you go about communicating. And so when people ask questions like, how do I communicate in a way that is both well received and effective? Well, it depends on your spouse. You have to communicate in a way that they can hear it, they can understand it. And I don't mean understand the words you're saying, but maybe the way and the context.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when we hear people say things like, well, how do you communicate when you don't like each other? Well, why is it that you don't like each other? Ask why questions. Talk about it. What is it about them? Because you obviously like, this is funny when people say that. It says, well, I don't feel anything towards my spouse, or I just don't like them. Well, something's changed.
Hannah just said, I said this, you heard that study. And she said, it helped so much to learn how my other half communicates. Yes, I totally agree. When you guys came across that, I thought, gosh, where was this 25 years ago? Because that is huge.
Yeah, that's another great one. It is.
I think it's a bigger deal for some marriages than others. For our marriage, it's huge because that was one of our biggest problems was communication by far, because we are wired completely differently. And so when he would say something...
I'm not even sure if I have wires. I'm wireless.
When he would say something, he would often mean something else, but for whatever reason not say what he actually meant. And so you can imagine, It hurt my feelings. I, cried, and it would just start all of the craziness. But once we learned each other, once we took the time to talk through, what are you thinking? How does this make you feel? All that stuff, which bottom line just goes back to what Jonathan talks about when he says, you before me. And I think that if I could just say one important thing in marriage, it's definitely learn the whole you before me. And if you have that mindset and you're actually thinking about the other person and wanting to understand them and wanting to make it work, it really changes everything.
Yeah. The I said this, you heard that resource in the chat. Bill, our tech guy, is giving you a link to that resource there I saw. And somebody asked what our color is, because that I said this, you heard that is all about colors. I think it's red, green, blue, and yellow, and the colors mean something different. So if you don't know about this is just going to be intriguing until you want to know what our colors are. I'm primarily red and then blue, and which means I'm a dominant driver, go, 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 and that's red. And then the blue is the detail. And so I can drive with the detail, all about the facts, all about the facts, all about the facts. Donna is green. She is green, which means she is very much in touch with feelings, emotions, heart. And so you can see that means oil and water right here. You can imagine that creates interesting stuff. And so yellow, by the way, is really outgoing, partier, always want to be people kind of thing. And these are overgeneralizations, but it's a really great study. The link is there. We would encourage you to look into it, because it does help so much when it comes to communication. Somebody asked a question, what do you do when your feelings of love go away? And they mentioned they've been to counseling, they do devotions, they pray, and their feelings of love have just gone. Listen, we joke about this a lot, or at least I do, is that, feelings come and go. Feelings are, burrito will give you a feeling, or at least a bad one will. So anyway, feelings sometimes will be very good and sometimes they're not. You cannot gauge the strength of your marriage based on feelings alone. And really, sometimes you have to disregard the feelings for a period of time. Now, feelings have a place and they're important. But we have found that the feelings, man, they're just unreliable. They can be all over the map. They're not always a reliable indicator of the health of the marriage or reality. Because a lot of times, like Donna had mentioned, I would say something I didn't mean, which would cause feelings in Donna that I didn't want her to have. And then I just created a crap storm unintentionally. And, when it all hits the fan then. So somebody talked about anger issues. They wanted to know, what do you do if and then this is all about communication still. What do you do if your spouse has major anger issues and they are lashing out, and then they're fine, and then they lash out, and then they're fine? When we were talking through this, I think it's so important to make sure you get to the core of what's making them angry, right? There's got to be a reason. Like when I was saying, when you say I just don't like my spouse, well, let's get to the reason. Communication is almost never about what it is, just about what you're communicating about. Whatever you're communicating about, when it's not going well, there's almost always a behind-the-scenes story that is leading to that anger outburst or that feeling of, I don't like you, we don't get along. Dig down. What's going on there?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of times, too, it's a personality type. Some people are stuffers. Jonathan, I think, talked about this at some point with how we respond to hurt and pain and stuff. And so if you are married to a stuffer, then you can hurt them over and over and over without knowing it. And they just keep swallowing it and pushing it down and taking it and not wanting to make a big deal out of it and move on and go to have an argument. And then all of a sudden it's
It comes out.
Exactly.
And it's ugly. And it's nasty.
So that's not always the case, but a lot of time it is. And so that's why Jonathan's saying, like, dig down deep and see if you can go back a few layers, and that will really help with learning each other too.
And that's exactly what I was getting ready to say. It comes back to that again, learning your spouse. Which one of you is more of a stuffer and which one of you is more of a spewer, right? People, one of you is probably more the kind of person that says everything they think, or is very quick to just voice their emotions, right? They never have to wonder what you think because you're telling us all. And then the other one, like Donna said, may be someone who stuffs, and that changes how you communicate with each other. Somebody wrote in and said, how do you overcome the worst arguments, the worst disagreements, or when things get really, really, really bad? Of course, I have no idea what this situation is. And let me stop right here and say, with any of these things whatsoever, our church can help you. I personally am not able to help all of you, but our church can help you all get the help you need. That's why our life care department exists. We can help direct you to counseling, mentoring, things that will help you guys be able to process what you're facing and what you're going through in a very healthy way. So please don't hesitate to reach out if you're kind of at your wit's end. And I know the whole thing. Well, we tried counseling, which for most people means they went to 2 or 3 sessions. They did not apply what the counselor, really had them do, and then they concluded it didn't work for me. So that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about we can genuinely help you get the help that you need if you're serious about it. But this whole thing about when you have the worst blow-ups, the worst arguments, the worst disagreements, and I think we've had our version of those. I mean, especially early on, and you don't have to be a screamer or a yeller or throw things or slam doors or anything like that for it to get bad. You can be quietly subversive and cutting and cunning and that's just as damaging. But when it gets really bad, whatever your experience of bad is, I think one of the first things is that it's going to take some time to work through. You don't just, snap your finger and that's over and that's done, especially if it's really bad. You don't sweep that kind of stuff under the rug. It takes time and forgiveness. And forgiveness often takes time, especially if what it is that needs to be forgiven was big enough and bad enough and hurtful enough. Sometimes you have to forgive over and over again, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my goodness. And sometimes, so like you were talking about, my brain just quit on me. You were talking about how people respond. Oh, and it's not always yelling. Sometimes it's pulling back. Jonathan's whole reaction to stress or chaos or something with the kids usually was retreating.
Well, it still is. I can feel it still.
Yeah, but what I saw that to me was, oh my gosh, are you freaking kidding me? This is when I need you the most. Get your butt back in here. And what I learned was exactly what he said before. He grew up in a really crappy home situation. And so he knew what not to do, but he didn't really have any idea what to do. And so his way of not doing the wrong thing was retreating. And he was trying to be like, okay, I don't want to mess up here. I don't want to make things worse. And so once I got that, that was huge for me. And so we were able to communicate about, okay, let's try this. Next time this happens. And I think that's another really important part is, first of all, it's impossible to find time for the two of you. I get that, especially when your kids are little. It's craziness. But when you can find that time, sometimes it's just 2 solid minutes. You can just say, hey, the next time we are both losing our minds with each other, let's try saying this. Or you try this. And it'll just kind of remind you of reality of, okay, this is not what it feels like right now, stop and think about what you've learned about him.
Again, talk about how you talk. This is an example of communicating about your communication. And really and truly, I can tell you from personal experience, you get better at this. You learn each other. There's so many things coming to mind. Here's why. I mean, it's taken us years to get good at this. Like every couple fights. Healthy couples fight clean. Unhealthy couples fight dirty. Very crass, okay, but it's true. Every couple fights. So it's taken us years to get to the point to where we've learned to fight well and productively, and so we don't fight so much. We still disagree and all that, but we're getting better at it. It's taken years. So here's what I don't get. Why husbands and wives split up and give up so quickly over disagreements of not being able to be on the same page. And then I look at them and I go, but so you're going to start over trying to learn somebody else? I mean, it's taken us years to learn each other. I mean, right? I know that doesn't sound very romantic, but I'm just like, why would you try to go figure out another fella? And she finally got me figured out, kind of thing. So Hutch asked a great question. How do you stop an explosive argument in the midst of it happening? That's a great question because it can get explosive fast sometimes, especially if you're tired.
And some people will say, no, we can't stop. We've got to finish this. We're not going to quit. So this is why you have to make this decision before it happens. Does that make sense?
You decide before you're in the moment.
Yeah,
That's
so
it.
talking about it before it happens is always the best plan. With parenting also, but that's a whole other issue. So I would definitely say that if it is getting to, like Hutch said, explosive, or if it's getting to a point where there's usually someone that's really great at arguing and stating all the facts, and then there's usually someone who's more emotional and their brain kind of pauses off and on, and they're like, ah! So when that happens and you're just at a standstill or at a point where something's going to happen bad, then you need to take a break. But you need to plan that that's going to happen, and you set a time ahead of time. That's one of the most important things, is say, if we get to the point where we just can't figure it out and we're just about to lose our mind with each other, we just need to go, okay, I've got to let's step away from this. Let's move on to something else. And we'll get back to it in X amount of time. So you set amount of time and you try it. And if it works well, great. If not, you adjust it and say, okay, we're going to try this next time.
Yeah, this is not about avoiding, like where people say, well, we're not going to talk about that. No, you set a time and a place and a space where you come back to it and re-engage.
Sometimes people need the opportunity to just clear their mind so they can think clearly. They don't think well in high stress, but they probably have something really important they need to say. So they might need 15 minutes to just breathe. And then other people might do something harmful if they don't step back, and they just need to chill. So there's a lot of reasons why it's a good idea to, take a little break, and then we're going to meet back up.
Yeah. I'll tell you what Donna does that works with me. She'll pull the pastor card on me. Right? So if you're not a pastor, you don't know what this is like. But I'll be in an argument where I am poorly applying what I teach, right? And she'll say, now, wait a second. Didn't you if I listen to what you said last weekend in that message, then what we should do here is, and it's just like, oh, man, you're right. So
I don't do that much.
No.
Every now and then.
No, but it needs to be done.
Yeah.
It needs to be
Every
done.
now and then I have to kind of wake you up.
So I think, let me summarize this by saying, I think when it comes to communication, you got to learn each other, and you got to hang in there and just get better at it. Take the time out, 5 minutes, 15 minutes, an hour, a few hours if you need it to cool down. A lot of times just that space allows you to clear your head and go, wait a second, I was wrong. And then when you come back together, you can start there. Hey, listen, I know we need to talk through this, but I want you to know that I'm sorry. I hurt you, and I didn't mean to hurt you, but I did. Or, you know what? I did mean to hurt you. I was unkind on purpose because I was mad. Right. Just be honest about it. And you do this back and forth long enough and well enough, you'll get better and better and better at this.
And the little things, you won't blow up or argue so much about the little things, because you'll learn like what's important and what's not. I don't know if that makes sense. I wanted to mention this person right here. Matt C says, how do you recommend taking the reins in a situation when you feel it's necessary without making your spouse feel disrespected? And that's a really good question, and that's very difficult, but it's very necessary sometimes. So that's something I did terribly, and something I learned to do. I think I would say really well.
I think you do it very well.
When the kids were little, Jonathan would kind of, do the wrong thing sometimes, and I knew I needed to step in. Their little hearts were crushed or whatever. We've got 2 girls, and but the most important thing in that situation is the respect. And I love that that person knows to even ask that. How do I do that without them being disrespected? And I think if that is your goal, then most of the time you're going to do a good job. Your mindset is what's most important right there. It's not to show your husband up or to make him look like the bad guy and you're the good guy, because that's actually incredibly dangerous. Your children are watching how you treat each other. And if you talk down about your husband or treat him like he's stupid or less than in any way, then that is what your child is going to learn. And that's how they are going to learn to treat that person. So I don't know if that makes sense, but if your child sees you constantly talking down to and disrespecting and correcting your husband, then your child is going to start being disrespectful. And because that's what you're modeling to them. And
both ways. When the husband is talking down or disrespecting the mom or the wife in the presence of the kids too, that gets reciprocated both ways. And so what you do in that moment, you might be thinking, oh my gosh, what is my husband doing? Oh my gosh, what is my wife doing? Get through the moment, find a space. You can pull each other behind closed doors and go, what the heck were you thinking? And you guys can straighten that out there, but try to not demean or belittle or shame each other in front of your kids.
When this would happen early on and it was new to us, and I was expecting him, I guess, just to know what to do. To me, it was obvious, and he would do something potentially harmful, whatever. Anyways, and I would be like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, oh my gosh, and I would emotionally outburst in front of our children because that mother bear would come out of that protecting role comes out in you, which is exactly what's supposed to come out. But instead of me responding like, oh my gosh, get out of the way, let me take care of this, I needed to say something more calming and more disarming, like, hey, I've got an idea, or come here for just a second. And when I do that, then that other parent knows, okay, let me pull back for just a second and let her take it. And when you get better at that, then through life, you'll do that with each other, because there are so many times that I had no idea what to do because I am the feeler, green, all that stuff you were saying. And Jonathan would just be clear and calm and know the facts and be able to deal with the situation wonderfully. And so you learn when to default to each other.
Yeah. Keith and Angie wrote that something that applies here, something that we taught before, is that you'll never shame your spouse to greatness. And that is so true. And that's exactly what you're saying. You'll never shame each other to greatness. And so be careful in those explosive, worst kind of things and communication. Be careful how you communicate. Again, we're talking about how you talk. We're communicating about how we communicate. And the more when you're not in the moment, after the argument, talk about how to do that better next time, and it will go so much better. All right, let's take a hard right turn. Let's talk about sex. You and me, that's bad. Anyway, okay. All right. Some of this, I want to,
coffee.
Yeah, make sure all the kids are in bed now. A lot of questions about this. Here's one that actually kind of made us chuckle a little bit because our minds kind of went somewhere with it that I don't know if somebody wrote in and was talking about, hey, well, the beginning of this is no laughing matter, but where our minds went with it, just
You're
bear
gonna
with
have
me.
to hurry up.
I'll explain it. Okay. Somebody wrote in and said, my husband is over 50 years old and is into porn and is trying to explain to me how men's bodies change from 50 years on and over and they need that. They must have that as a part of their experience in order to help them, whatever, right? And we just kind of looked at each other and we were just like, seriously?
Well, in that question too, they were writing something to the effect of the man was saying that or implying that she wasn't enough for him, and I just was like, "Who, man? I just want to talk to this guy and be like, well, you think you're enough? Like,
yeah, that's right. You're over 50, so there." I don't know.
It just makes me mad. But anyways, you go ahead.
On a much more serious note, we've had a few questions come in about pornography, and let me just kind of say a couple things here that I hope you don't take the wrong way. But there is never, ever an okay scenario for porn in your marriage, in your relationship. There's just not. There's just not. People come to me as a pastor and they say, well, we watch it together, we look at it together, and it helps. No. Watching someone else in that kind of intimate setting can only be harmful. Pornography is one of the most addictive addictions out there, period. And one of the most difficult ones to treat, one of the most difficult ones to beat. And I'm not trying to discourage any of you. What I'm trying to do is get you to wake up. If you are a guy or a girl, men and women both get into this, and you're giving yourself all types of, personal permission. Well, my situation, my wife won't, my husband won't, they don't understand, blah, 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 blah. Any of that kind of self-talk should be a red flag to be like, this is an area I need to get some help with. And so...
and we've got lots of resources for help
yes,
at
we
the
do.
church. So
yes,
that
we
would
do.
be, there's no way we can tackle all of these subjects in this short amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not alone.
No.
Those of you who are struggling with this, and we have amazing resources that we can help you with through Life Care.
When you look at porn and you see porn, one thing you need to keep in mind is that is somebody's daughter, that is somebody's son, that is somebody's brother, somebody's sister, that could be somebody's mother, somebody's dad. I mean, these are not just objects. These are real people. And somebody else wrote in and said, hey, listen, we're just not having sex and hardly ever. And how can you have a happy marriage? Can we be happy in our marriage? Hardly never having sex. And so the answer to that question is yes. Absolutely.
The quick answer.
That's the quick answer. That's the quickie.
Oh my gosh.
That's so good. I'm just waiting for that moment. Okay. So the quick answer is yes, absolutely. Because a marriage and the health of marriage is not built on sex anyway. That's an important part of it.
The most obvious way to see that is there are people who are paraplegic, and I could go on and list lots of people.
All kinds of health issues.
That's not an option in their relationship, and so you just want them to be creative in other ways.
Yeah, and sex is not the epicenter of your relationship. Now, with that being said, the two of you need to, here we go again, talk about it. It's awkward, I get it. But the frequency of sex should be determined by the two of you together. And if the two of you are in agreement and the two of you are in a good place, it doesn't matter if it's, twice an hour, twice a week, twice a month, twice a year. That's totally up to you guys.
Well,
you know?
and
So
the truth is, if you're together long enough, which is the plan, so over 25 years, it's gonna change. It's just gonna be, a lot and little, and then a lot, and then, not so much. Your kids are gonna play a huge role in that. Your health is gonna play a huge role. Your jobs, just so many different aspects of life are gonna play roles in that. And so you just need to make sure that you communicate.
Yep.
is the biggest
Keep
thing.
talking.
And that's a goal. Like, that's your goal, is to have a healthy sex relationship with your spouse. And so you guys be creative and talk it through and figure it out.
And it was very awkward for me the first time we talked about sex, right? Because in a man's mind, you just kind of innately should know everything that you need to know and do. And it just emanates from your being and mind-blowing experiences, right? But when you realize that's not happening and you actually take the risk of having a conversation about it, it's awkward. Oh my gosh, it's so awkward. But I'll tell you what, I got through that conversation, and when I was glad? The next time we were intimate. I was so glad we had that conversation. And I'm just like, hey, a little bit of chatting over here, on the side, we can figure this thing out. And again, it's just like communication or anything. The sex in your marriage can be as great as the two of you want to make it.
Absolutely.
But it's the two of you. It's not the two of you and some porn site, the two of you and something else, somebody else. It's the two of you. It's a gift from God. So with that being said, let's shift to another area where a few questions, unfortunately, way too many questions came in about affairs. Okay, so most of the time when someone is talking about an affair, they're talking about sex with someone that you're not married to. And so most of the questions, this is just heartbreaking, were about, how do you move on once your spouse has had an affair? And how do you get over it? Is the marriage just always over automatically when someone has an affair? And so that's just, first of all, if you have had that experience and your marriage has had that happen, whether it's something you did or something your spouse did, we are so sorry that that's something you've had to endure and go through. Just awful. And yeah, more times than not in society, that's a death nail. That's a death nail for most relationships and most marriages because it's such a big deal to get over. However, not only have we been married for 25 years, I've been pastoring, we've been doing this church leadership thing for over 25 years, and we have seen many, many couples fight through the healing process after an affair and actually forgive each other, grow through it into a healthy marriage again. Now, it's hard, and it takes a lot of time, a lot of counseling, which is going to be expensive, but it's worth it. And God's plan A is for there to be healing, restoration, and forgiveness. Now,
I'm looking for a resource. That's why I'm looking down. I took a picture of something, so you keep talking.
Okay, cool. But that is often very difficult to do and very difficult to experience. That's why most people are like, oh, did he cheat on you or did she cheat on you? Well, it's over. We're done. We're through. As followers of Jesus, we have the Spirit of God within us to empower us in the most unimaginable situations for forgiveness and healing. And you were going to bring up something. Yeah, I see you got it now.
Yeah, first, though, I wanted to say the two of us have never had to deal with that in our own marriage. Jonathan had to deal with all of that as a child, watching his parents.
My biological father have multiple affairs on my mom.
So,
so I've seen it that way.
But I want to be quick to say we don't know that pain, and we don't know that crazy healing road. And so I was looking at the name of the book that I would totally suggest. Some of you have probably already read it. It's by Lisa Turkhurst, and it's called "It's Not Supposed to Be This Way." And her husband had an affair, I think, I don't know all of the details. I know it was craziness and heartbreaking. And this book is, I think, the healing process, and I think that it's probably the best one out there right now. I've just heard wonderful things.
Yeah, I've heard nothing but great things about it. So there's great resources out there. If you have had an affair happen in your marriage, it does not automatically mean it is over. So please know there is hope. It's a difficult road, but please know there is hope. Now, let's move past that a little bit. And let's move into this area. The first Conversations Live event we ever did back a few months ago was on the topic of depression. And we've had several questions come up about that. Mental illness and depression. Is it okay to seek a divorce if your spouse is mentally ill or if they're struggling with depression? Does God allow for divorce in that situation? And let me just say that just breaks my heart, because with mental illness, depression, anxiety, or any level of mental illness, it is something that affects every fiber and every part of your relationship and your marriage. But in no way is it some type of out for the other spouse to say, well, then I just can't hang in this. I just can't deal with this. I just can't make it through this situation. Just in no way. I mean, I don't even know. I don't want to be respectful because I don't know the situation of the person that asked. But inside of me, if I can just be honest, I mean, what would possess us to think that would give us an out just because someone is struggling with a mental illness like that? Because it's no different than a physical illness, a heart illness, a cancer illness. It just happens to be a mental illness. And so I would just encourage you, if you ask that question and you're thinking about separating from your spouse because of a mental illness they had, you need to reconsider. Because all that's going to do is add more pain and hurt to an already difficult situation. Anything you want to say about that?
It's such a layered thing, mental illness, and I'm speaking from those of you who heard us talk before know that I have dealt with that, so I'm speaking from personal experience. It just breaks my heart, but I understand. I know that there were times when I was struggling really hard at some point, and Jonathan was just at his wit's end with what to do and how to help, and threw his hands up like, I don't know what to do. But there are going to be times like that in your life, and that's what you signed up for. I hate to say it that way, but when we said in sickness and health before God, we just need to make sure that we remember those vows. And if you are at a loss as to what to do, then you definitely need to get some help, because it is a very difficult thing. And we can be a great resource for you there again with Life Care. So don't try to do it alone. There are so many things like that in life. If you are married to an alcoholic, if you are married to any kind of addict, you don't want to try to do all of that alone. And so you want to get professional help. But definitely don't run away from it. And
we had some questions come in about addiction in general. And so if you have a spouse who is dealing with an addiction, it is very appropriate for you to set some boundaries and for you to have some honest conversations. But your job is to come alongside of them and help them get help. And I understand all the details of they don't want help, they don't think they have a problem. When Donna mentioned what she'd said a while ago, you signed up without knowing what it would mean in sickness and in health, for better, for worse, till death do us part. And we have no idea what that means when we say that's what we're in for. But I'm just telling you, this is almost so simple we miss it. You just got to hang in there and not give up and see each other through it. whether it's depression or an addiction or another thing you're dealing with. We've had questions come in about how do you do marriage when you got small kids around, because they take all your time and all your energy, and you can't care for your spouse because you're caring for your kids. You can't give your spouse attention because you're giving them attention. You can't have sex. You can't, there's all kinds of things that are hard to come by when your kids, are in the house, kids are little. And I would just say that's normal. What you're experiencing is completely normal. You just have to get creative and do a lot of communicating when it comes to, especially when the kids are small, right? It's exhausting. It's just full on all you, all her, all him. And you just, those years, you just get through them and figure it out the best you can. Looking back on that, I think that's what we did.
Yeah, if you got to remind yourself constantly, if you need to, that you're a team and that we are going to figure this out, and take it on as a challenge. Sometimes, I would take it on as a personal challenge to show the world that we can do this. Yep. And sometimes that you just got to do that. You just got to, put your seatbelt on and here we go. And as long as you are looking out for the other one, and if I'm looking out for him and he's looking out for me, then we're going to do the best we can. And sometimes it gets bumpy and crazy, and then you'll be in a really great place for a while, and things will be calm, and you'll be like, what is this? And then it'll be crazy again. But I don't know. I think it's the whole mindset of you before me.
Mm-hmm. And so you brought this up, so let me go there. The whole idea of teamwork. Okay, This is so important if you got young kids. This is so important if you got no kids. This is important if you've been married 5 minutes, 5 years, 50 years. This is so huge. This has been probably one of the most helpful things for me to learn, is that you are a team in every aspect of life and relationship. You are a team. And this is so huge when you got little kids. This will help. But when you have teenagers, this is going to be huge. When your nest is empty again, this is still true. Everything. There's no such thing as just a man's job or a woman's job. And I don't do that. That's what women do. I don't do that. That's what men do. You just team up. You look at each other and say, hey, who's going to do this? I'll do this. You do that. We'll do it together. We take turns. Whatever that looks like for you guys. For years, we have been figuring out what that looks like for us. And it's changed through the years sometimes, But we have to see each other as a team, which means we win as a team, we lose as a team, which means when there's work to be done, we do the work as a team, and we try to rest as a team. It's just, you really have to see yourselves as a team in every aspect.
And you take turns. You really learn to take turns, because most of the time, once children are added to the equation, you both can't relax at the same time. Mostly you can't. Sometimes, I don't know, gosh, at one point when we had our first baby, we could never even eat at the same time when he would come home from work. Dinner, Morgan screamed for hours with colic. And so you take turns, and you just constantly do that. Even the other day, I was working on, my job is hand making something, and I had a lot of orders. And so I was needing to work kind of overtime for me. And Jonathan started putting away the clean dishes. And I just made sure to say, thank you so much. I know that was not supposed to be you today. And I appreciate it so much. And so I make a mental note that as soon as I can, I'll take the next round of whatever is that he needs a break from. So you just constantly...
Yeah, and I walk in the bedroom and seeing she's folding all these clothes, my clothes, right? My underwear, my socks. And I say, thank you so much for doing that. And maybe the next go around, it'll be me doing it. So you just see each other as a team, as we're on the same page together, which by the way, let me go back to communication and disagreements real quick. One of the best things that helped me early on in our marriage with that whole team thing is when Donna helped me understand when I hurt her or when I'm unkind to her, I'm actually turning on a teammate. I'm turning on a teammate. It's almost like friendly fire. And and instead of us teaming up together to take on this big bad world, we're attacking each other. And that helped me understand conflict a little bit differently too. So teamwork is huge. All right. We only got about 5 more minutes. Okay. And most of you guys are hanging with us.
Yeah. So moving back to the mental illness, someone said, mental illness can lead to emotional abuse. Do we excuse abuse because of a mental illness? And absolutely not. So once some sort of abuse enters into the picture, that's another story. And it's just another reason why it's so important to get help. It's not something to play around with.
Bring other people into the situation.
Absolutely.
Professionals.
Absolutely.
Professionals. Absolutely. I agree 100%. All right. I want to spend the last few moments we have together talking about something that has helped us tremendously, and I think will help all of you, because a lot of the questions that came in is about how do we protect our marriage? Do you ever have moments of insecurity and worry and fear about your marriage not lasting or it all falling apart? And the answer to all of that is absolutely yes. And so the best word that we've come up with is the word safeguard. I think boundaries would be another one, or guardrails, but we've often talked about safeguards to put in place in our marriage to help guide us and keep us on track. Listen, I'm a follower of Jesus and I'm a pastor, but I could still screw up and make a decision to devastate my marriage and screw up my home life and ruin our lives. She is a follower of Jesus and pastor's wife, but she has the ability to make decisions that would do all those horrible things as well. So all of us need safeguards, anything we can put in our lives to help us. And it's not just about rules, okay? It's about things, boundaries and guardrails that we can put into place. And so let me give you just a few examples real quick, okay? I don't meet one-on-one and counsel with women. I just don't. I don't. And it doesn't matter what the reason is, just a safeguard. I don't go to lunch, go to dinner, go to breakfast with women. She doesn't go do coffee with men. We just don't do it.
Can I explain that a little bit? First of all, he means alone. So if he needs to meet with another woman, even if he's just meeting with another staff member that happens to be a woman, and he just keeps his door open. So that is a safeguard that we decided before we got married. So 26 years ago, we actually, my parents actually guided us through the process of setting up safeguards because you want to set up your marriage for success. And so that has been an invaluable gift to us that they spoke into our lives and told us that, because we set rules, and there have just been very, very few. I can think of like 2. But anyways, that it's not even a question. It's just how you do life. And one of the biggest reasons why you are setting these safeguards up is not just because you can't know, what you're going to feel like or the situation, but also because
you're not trustworthy, right?
Right, yeah. But you are being attacked.
Yep.
And especially in our situation, as lead pastor and lead pastor's wife of a relatively large church, Satan is always trying to take us down in some way or the other. And an obvious way is through marriage. And so these safeguards and guardrails just help protect us against times when we're not even thinking about it. Most of the time you don't. And so if that's set there, then it kind of helps with the whole times when you're being attacked and you don't even know it.
Let me give another quick example of a quick safeguard. This seems like a little bitty thing, but men are so visually engaged. I learned this from Donna's dad, is that when we're watching a movie or a television show and something inappropriate, a naked woman, a sex scene, real graphic situation, I'll just look away. I'll look down, I'll look up, I'll look at her, I'll just look somewhere else, look at my phone, and I'll just turn, and she knows to let me know when it's good to look again. Just a safeguard, so I'm not filling my mind with images that I don't want there, that I don't need there, so that I can stay focused on the things I need to stay focused on.
Same with me if it's a man. It's just usually in our culture, It's usually women. Sometimes it is a man, but we just do that for each other. It's a respect thing. And so it's just such a part of how it is. Our kids grew up with that. And so now that's a part of their relationships too, because that's just what normal was, that you just kind of look away for a second and, you'll be like, all right, we're good. And you move on, and it's not even something you even have to think about, but it really does help the other person feel respected.
So talk about safeguards, and your safeguards will be different than our safeguards probably, but talk about some safeguards to help honor the vows that you made to each other and to keep these values front and center. Again, tons of questions coming in. There's still some coming in. I wish we could get to all of them. Maybe we'll do this again sometime we'll get feedback on how to do it better. I'm sure we can do it better. But we will maybe do this again and take more questions. Again, we don't have all the answers. Our job, we can't fill your cup. We can just empty ours. And I'm feeling pretty poured out and emptied right now. I got nothing left. And I want to honor this time. So can we pray together? And then we'll be done. Father, we thank you so much for this time that you've given us. I have absolutely no idea who's watching and where this will go. But you do. You know every marriage situation, every relationship dynamic. And you know the journey that Donna and I have been on, that we're still on together. We learned so much, and we're changing so much. We're growing so much still. And may you take the things that we've shared from our experience, not because we know and have the answers, but we just want to be able to share with what we've learned. And Father, I ask that you would help the marriages represented with those that are watching to get stronger and take a step towards health and take another step towards growth. And that you would honor the husbands and the wives represented here as they honor each other and you. In Jesus' name, amen. Thanks, guys. Thanks for joining us.